It was a burning summer afternoon. After handing over goods to a few customers, I was sitting idle in my shop. At that time of day, customers rarely came. Only one or two people would show up occasionally. I looked at my watch. It was 1 p.m. By then, hunger had completely taken over me. Going home to eat was not even an option, because the place I called home was just a house. The people living there had no concern for my food, comfort, or rest. They only cared about the money I earned. If they ever found out that I had closed the shop to eat, they would create absolute chaos. So I stood up to close the shop and decided to bring food from a nearby hotel. I had not yet pulled down the shop shutter when my eyes fell on an innocent little girl approaching. She was walking straight toward my shop. I stood outside watching her, thinking she might be coming to buy something. She was holding something wrapped in cloth. When she came closer, she handed it to me and said, "This food is for you. Mummy sent it." I was stunned. I had just stepped out to get food for myself, and someone had already sent food for me. I took the food from the girl, thanked her, and went inside the shop to eat. The food was extremely delicious. It was clear that someone had cooked it with great care and love. After I finished eating, customers started coming one by one, and I became busy with my work. The next day, the same girl came again with food and said, "Mummy sent this." From that day on, this became a daily routine. Different kinds of meals began arriving for me every day, and I would eat until I was full. About a week passed like this. The girl came every single day, but I never asked who she was, or why her mother was sending food for me. That question came to my mind only today, when she came again in the afternoon. I gently placed my hand on her head and asked, "My child, who are you? And why does your mummy send food for me every day?" What she replied left me shocked and deeply disturbed. She said, "Mummy gives me the food and says, 'Go and give this to Papa. That's why I bring the food to you.'" Hearing this, I completely lost my senses. The child was innocent and unaware, but I was an intelligent adult. How could I eat someone else's food without asking or confirming anything? And that too, continuously for a whole week? I felt deeply ashamed. Now I needed to apologize to the people whose food I had been eating. I held the girl's hand, took her outside the shop, and stood with her in the street. I asked her, "My child, where is your papa's shop in this market?" I thought she was meant to deliver food to her father's shop, and had mistakenly brought it to mine. But the girl replied, "My papa doesn't have a shop anywhere in this market." I asked again, "Then for whom and where do you take this food?" Her answer was the same. "I bring the food to you. Mummy told me to give it to Papa." I tried again and again to explain. "I am not your Papa. The person your mummy sends the food for, you must give it to him." But every time, she stubbornly brought the food to me and said, "Mummy sent this for you." I became extremely troubled by this. I was already ashamed for having eaten the food so many times. So that day I decided to go to the girl's house and find out who her mother was really sending the food for. The girl was only 5 years old, so making a mistake was not surprising. This time I refused to take the food. The girl stood there with tears in her eyes and said, "I won't go back until you take the food." Helpless, I had to accept it. I placed the food on the table without eating it. When the girl started walking back, I picked up the food and followed her. She entered a nearby house. I rang the doorbell and waited for someone to come out. After a short while, a young woman came to the door, her face covered with a piece of cloth. I said to her, "Your daughter brings food to my shop every day due to a misunderstanding. She takes food for her father, but mistakenly leaves it at my shop. I have explained this to her many times, but she insists on delivering it here. Please tell me where her papa's shop is, and I will deliver the food myself." She stood quietly and listened. When I finished speaking, she said, "My daughter's papa has passed away. There is no mosque nearby, so my daughter brings food to a shop as charity for her papa's reward." Hearing that the child was an orphan filled my heart with deep sorrow. I felt ashamed and quietly returned to my shop. I returned to my shop and sat down, but my mind could not let go of the thoughts of that little girl and her mother. I kept wondering what must have happened to her husband. In the prime of her youth, she had become a widow. That entire day passed with these thoughts. My heart was not in my work, so I closed the shop early and headed home. I had barely reached my room when my stepmother saw me and asked why I had returned so early. I said, "I wasn't feeling well today, so I closed the shop early and brought the earnings with me." This was my daily routine. I would leave for the shop early in the morning and return at night, handing over the entire day's earnings to my stepmother. I was the only earning member of the house. My father was a paralysis patient, confined to his bed. He had opened the shop during his healthy days, which was our only source of income. When he suddenly suffered a paralysis attack, closing the shop meant starving to death. I was very young, but on my stepmother's insistence, I left my studies and took over the shop. Since then, my entire life revolved only between home and shop. From the age of 15 to 25, I ran that shop. In all those years, I never took a single day off, nor did I ever think of going anywhere. Earning money became the sole purpose of my life. I had no connection with happiness or sorrow. I knew nothing about relatives on either side of the family. I don't even remember when I became an orphan, because I don't remember my mother's face at all. I only ever heard from my stepmother that I was her stepson. Apart from me, my father had another child, a stepdaughter. She studied at a big university in the city. Whenever she came home, she didn't even like talking to me. I would leave home every morning without eating anything and return late at night after closing the shop. There was never food kept for me. Whatever my stepmother cooked, she ate herself and fed my father. I considered it a blessing that at least she took care of my father. Otherwise, she considered even him a burden. For my father's sake alone, I bore the expenses of the house, which included my stepmother and stepsister. Every day, I gave her 5,000 to 10,000. Yet according to her, I had done nothing for them. My father lay in one room, and even meeting him depended on my stepmother's permission. If she allowed it, I could see him. If not, weeks would pass without me seeing my own father. I had been trained since childhood not to question her. This habit had been instilled in me by my father himself. My stepmother loved my father deeply, so I never dared speak in front of her. Seeing my stepmother reminded me of that woman who sent food daily for her deceased husband. And here, my father was alive, yet deprived of even a single piece of bread. What a loyal woman she was, who sent food through her small daughter for her husband's share. I admired her character. I wished that after my mother's death, my father had also found such a faithful wife. Then perhaps there would have been some value for human beings in our house, not just money. That night, lost in these thoughts, I don't know when I fell asleep. The next morning, as usual, I stepped out to go to the shop. My stepmother stopped me and said, "It seems your heart isn't in the shop these days. That's why you close it early. Do you even realize that you are the only earning man in this house? You are a man, and it is your responsibility to provide everything we need. Your father put this burden on your shoulders. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask you for even a single rupee." I did not argue. I simply nodded and said, "I'll try to give you more money from now on." She then said, "Next week my daughter will complete her studies and return home. As soon as she comes back, I will start looking for a marriage proposal for her. You will have to handle her marriage expenses. After all, she is your sister and your responsibility. I want to collect dowry items even before the proposal is finalized. If you can arrange money, gather a few lakhs, because I cannot keep my daughter in this poor house for long." I had no answer. I could not arrange such a large amount. So I left the house silently and sat in my shop, lost in thought. My sister was 5 years younger than me. My stepmother worried about her marriage, but she had never once spoken about settling my life. That day, the shop was busier than usual because it was the Eid season, and I owned a clothing shop. While attending customers, I didn't even realize when that sweet little girl arrived with food. She had been waiting for a long time. I was startled and asked her how long she had been there. She said, "It's been half an hour." I felt ashamed of my carelessness. I took the food and quickly closed the shop shutter. Otherwise, people wouldn't have let me eat even 2 bites. After eating, I resumed my work. Around evening, when the rush reduced, I was sitting idle in the shop. My eyes went toward the street. I saw the same woman walking fast with the child in her arms. The child lay unconscious on her shoulder. I immediately rushed out and stopped her. She said, "The child has fainted due to high fever. I am taking her to the hospital." I borrowed a nearby friend's motorcycle, placed the child in front, and asked the woman to sit behind. Within 10 minutes, we reached the hospital. The child was treated immediately, and soon her fever came down. The woman thanked me, but I told her it was my duty and asked her not to feel embarrassed. I dropped them home on the motorcycle. She invited me inside for tea, but I refused and said, "Please take care of the child. I'll have tea some other day." I returned home, only to find another emergency waiting for me. When I reached home, there was chaos there as well. My stepmother asked angrily, "Where were you?" I sent a boy to the shop, but it was closed. She said my father's condition had suddenly worsened. A doctor was present. I immediately ran to my father's room, but the doctor told me that my father was only a guest of a few more moments. He had suffered another severe paralysis attack. By nightfall, my father left this world, leaving me completely alone. After completing the funeral and other rituals, I stayed at home for a few days. I had no desire to open the shop or work anymore. The grief of my father's death was too heavy to bear. My stepsister had also returned, leaving her university. My stepmother constantly demanded money from me and would not even offer me a cup of tea, saying, "Serving you is not our responsibility." A week passed like this. Then marriage proposals started arriving. For my stepsister, her mother selected a boy. In the second week after my father's death, she decided to arrange a simple wedding. She demanded a large sum of money from me, but I had no way to arrange such an amount. Eventually, the house and shop were sold with mutual consent, and the money was used to cover all wedding expenses. After the wedding, my stepmother moved to another city with her daughter. I stayed alone in the house for a few days. Then one day, some people came to vacate the house. Along with them, the house was sold, and through deception, I was made to sign documents related to the shop as well. I had no choice but to leave the house. Soon after, the shop owner also asked me to vacate the shop. 2 months passed, with the shop closed. One day, while I was removing the remaining items from the shop with the help of laborers, the little girl came to me and said, "Uncle, where did you go? I came every day with food, but your shop was closed." I gently hugged her and told her, "This shop is no longer mine, and I don't live here anymore. I'll be going somewhere else." She returned home crying. After a short while, she came back with food for me. When I accepted it, she said, "Uncle, Mummy says, you promised to come for tea that day, but never came." I thought to myself, before leaving this place, I should at least fulfill that promise. So I went to their house for tea. When I arrived, the child's mother went into the kitchen to prepare tea. While talking, I asked the child where they had come from and why they lived alone. She told me that after her papa passed away, their relatives constantly fought with her mummy, so they left that house. Soon, her mother came with tea and asked what we were talking about. She thanked me for helping them that day at the hospital, but I replied, "You send food for me every day. I should be the one thanking you." She said, "I send that food only to send reward to my late husband. I have no favor over you." Before finishing the tea, I told her that my house had been sold and that I would be leaving the neighborhood. After hearing my story, I couldn't stop myself from asking why, despite being a woman alone, she had settled in a strange neighborhood. She said, "This is a long story. If you have time, listen." I agreed. She began, "I am also a victim of this cruel world, just like you. My parents died when I was only 7 years old. They both passed away together in an accident, leaving me at the mercy of the world. At first, my uncle raised me, but I could only stay with him for 2 months. My aunt made me do all the household work and beat me badly if I made mistakes. One day, after I fainted from her beating, my maternal uncle found out and brought me to his house. For a few days, life was peaceful there. Then my aunt there also began showing her true colors. By the age of 10, I had learned to do all household work, from cooking to cleaning. Everything was my responsibility. When I was 12, a marriage proposal came for my uncle's elder son. In return, the girl's family asked for my hand. I was engaged to my uncle's younger son. My in-laws were good people, so I began receiving some love. When I turned 17, my fiancé often visited, and we liked each other. With my sister-in-law's help, we spoke secretly. Those were the most beautiful days of my life. Then tragedy struck. My sister-in-law was pregnant and went for a hospital checkup with her husband. They met a terrible accident. She passed away, but her baby survived. A few days later, doctors amputated her husband's legs. He became permanently disabled. The house fell into mourning. I raised the baby like my own child. Seeing this, my aunt decided to marry me to that disabled man. I cried bitterly. My maternal uncle took pity on me and secretly arranged my marriage with my original fiancé at a mosque. I left that house forever, but because the marriage was done secretly, I never received respect in my in-laws' home. My husband was a soldier and often away on duty. 1 month before he was to return home, news arrived that he had been martyred. My mother-in-law blamed me, calling me unlucky. A month later, I found out I was pregnant. I gave birth to a daughter. They kept me in the house unwillingly for 4 years, then finally forced me to leave. I returned to my uncle's house, only to find he had passed away. I had nowhere else to go, so I came here, living on my husband's pension. Hearing her story, my heart filled with pain. She was even more helpless than me. As I asked for permission to leave, the little girl stood in front of me and said, "Uncle, please don't go. You don't have a home either. Stay with us."